everybody. Welcome back. It is 2:00 on National Manufacturing Day. I'm Cedro Toro from the Utah Manufacturers Association and Impact Utah, your source for all things manufacturing. If you need training, coaching, help with your company to make more money, supply chain issues, anything you need, we can help you out. So reach out to me anytime. We are excited to welcome Wyatt Hart from Casper's Ice Cream, our favorite manufacturing company because of the fact that they make the most delicious ice cream, which we enjoy frequently here at the office. So welcome. I'm going to introduce you. He's going to talk about building a team of leaders from the front lines. And Wyatt knows how to do this because he started at the age of 16 at Casper's Ice Cream and worked his way up. He was a production worker, and then he became the continuous improvement coordinator. And while working his way through up through Casper's, he successfully grew a variety of production teams and leaders that still use the same methods initially implemented. And throughout all this, Wyatt has been getting a degree in mechanical and electrical engineering from Utah State University. I'm an electrical engineer, and I wouldn't wish that double major on anyone. Why would you do that, Wyatt? You just get one.
You know,
just
the
one's
more
good, man.
The more you know, the better, right?
Yeah, that's it. So thanks for joining us. We're really excited to hear about what you're doing and, everything about what you've accomplished at Casper. So if you want, you can go ahead and share your screen and take over from us. I'll have McKinley stop sharing on our end, and then you can present what you're going to present or just say hi to everyone.
Yeah, well, hello, everybody. To all those who are with us here live today, and to all those who may be watching the recording.
That's right. Yeah, we've actually had a lot of interest in the recordings. A lot of people said, "Hey, I'm gonna, send me the links. I want to see some of the other speakers." So there will definitely be folks watching these later. So again, thanks for joining us. A lot of people will benefit from this.
Awesome, good. So yeah, like Cedro mentioned, I've been working here at Casper's Ice Cream for the last 7 years, ever since I was 16. I started as a line worker, worked my way up to a line manager, and then to some supervisor positions. And then over this last year, I've been the continuous improvement coordinator here. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So I'll be talking about building a team of leaders from the front line. And with that, my agenda is to go over the kind of real life examples that I have from when I was a shift supervisor in both 2017 as a grave shift manager, and then 2018 to 2020 while I was a swing shift one. So we'll also touch base on the short-term and long-term benefits that come from that, this kind of concept of building leaders from the front lines. And then I'll give you guys kind of a general model that seems like you can kind of piece stuff together to fit your company or your needs on however, whatever you can do to help improve your place too. So lastly, I'll send you guys off with a challenge that hopefully you should be able to do pretty easily. So
excellent. We need to challenge everybody today. So that's perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So to begin with, in 2017, I was promoted to the grave shift supervisor. And in production, we kind of have a general team layout that almost all of our production lines follow. So the head honcho is what I was, the shift supervisor. And then below that, on this particular production line, I had 2 lines actually, and each one had a line manager. And then underneath of them were 6 line workers. So when I started out on this grave shift, there were a few issues. The previous managers that had run the shift before me for the last few years hadn't been developing very good habits or a very good culture within the team. So they were really drama heavy, as in everybody knew about your business before you actually came to work and would talk to you about it thoroughly. And it wasn't a very positive atmosphere. So along with that came quite a few breaking in like our policy procedures, and just in general kind of bad habits had been there for a long time. So with that, the shift was also kind of on a path of self-destruction almost. I was told this a few months later after I kind of changed things around, that if I wasn't going to be able to help improve this team or help them do better, we were actually going to disband that grave shift and break up the team, use them in different areas, or potentially just not have one anymore because it wasn't turning a profit, which is pretty important to a business, as you may know. So, to help with this, on the first day that I became the manager, I tried to start with changing the culture that day. I tried to do more of a servant style leadership, where the very first thing we were doing the day that I started was we were finishing up a weekend run where we just finished production for the weekend and we just really started cleaning, like a really in-depth cleaning, tearing the equipment apart, making sure we get rid of all the contaminations that could possibly grow over the weekend if it wasn't cleaned properly, things like that. Grave Shift was very notorious for doing it very quickly and not very effectively. So they would often be really good at turning a kind of 6-hour clean into 2 hours, which was not very thorough. So to help change with that, the very first day, they were kind of telling me that they were finished cleaning. So I walked the floor, tried to see if it was up to the standards that I had originally set, because I was a line manager on this line as the swing shift supervisor before this, and just got promoted up to the grave one. So I kind of had my own expectations from the line already. And as I was walking through the line, I started to notice quite a few issues. And being kind of the new guy, I was also one of the youngest shift supervisors ever at Casper's. I didn't want to just throw on a lot of things to this new team and kind of really get on their backs about it. So I just started cleaning. Like, I started cleaning up the spots that they had missed. And within 5 minutes, they all were kind of like circling around me, trying to see what I was looking at or what I was looking for. And sure enough, all of them started cleaning in a lot more thorough sense just right then. And that kind of showed that the team was willing to adapt, and that I wasn't going to just maintain the status quo that the shift had at that point, which I think was really powerful. So we that day, instead of going home 3-4 hours early like they were planning on, we actually ended up staying over an hour late to make sure it was done properly in the right way. It was one of the first times that day shift was pleased with how clean the line was Monday morning when they came in, which is great to hear. Great to hear. So because of this, I learned that I needed to kind of focus on at least 3 areas like to help improve the shift. I knew that I needed to have more open communication with the team. I needed to get them into a more goal setting mind frame where they can give and receive feedback on their goals, as well as hold each other and themselves accountable to the goals that they do set. And then as well, on top of that, is I wanted them to always be looking for ways to get better and to be better, because that can have a huge impact on the team's culture. So with those things in mind, I tried to implement that on one of our weekly schedules that we send out. So this was kind of one of the first few drafts that I was doing, where every week I would schedule who is going to be where on the line. And at the bottom, I started adding in this kind of little section, this little segment where it showed a quote, which is kind of just an inspirational quote that I like to throw onto things that changed every week. I would set a quarterly goal, which rolled down to monthly goals, which rolled down to weekly goals, to help the line give direction on where we wanted to go. And then on top of that, I also did these kind of little things that we should really be focused on and improving. What is going on this week, if it's anything outside of the norm, and what is potentially going to happen next week. So that way, that kind of good communication was starting to roll out to people. And this worked extremely well. So after 6 months of being on this team, they grew to have a culture of where they were kind of champions for myself and for the whole shift. We were actually producing product and increasing the bottom line. So that's great to hear from a business standpoint. But on the team side, they got into a culture where even when production had issues during the week, where that would force us to run even later on Friday night, Saturday mornings for grave shift, the team was willing to stay after, make sure that we not only finished out the run, but got the line cleaned up and ready for Monday morning without me really having to push them on it at all. I just let them know that, things happen during the week. We really got to finish this out, because if not, we're going to have a lot of waste somewhere. And they understood that. And that was really powerful. So they also developed a mindset of kind of along those lines, where it was no longer the next shift's problem. It was, we're going to help them and set them up to be successful with whatever they're trying to do for the day, because the more that they succeed, the more we'll succeed in the upcoming night.
Hey, Wyatt, did you have any metrics or visuals or something to say, the shift did a great job with their, cleaning, and the equipment was well prepped for the next shift? How are you providing feedback between the shifts, or, grading them? Was it just like, it feels like we're doing better? Or did you have anything more structured around that?
So at the time, this was kind of the first time that any of the shift supervisors have really dug into things this deeply.
Right.
And most of the stuff that I was doing, it was all kind of verbal communication, essentially, which later on, as I moved into the next shift supervisor position, the swing shift one, I started to create those visuals because I learned how powerful they could be, as I'm sure you know. Yeah.
So there's an evolution, right? Starting teaching people and then making it more structured, more visual. I like it. And just so anybody else knows, I have questions. If you're watching today and you have questions, please put them in the chat window, and McKinley will read those, and we can ask those to Wyatt as we go along. So I'd hate for you to have a question about how he's doing something and then forget it because we're, 5 slides in. So just, jump in and feel free to ask questions as we go.
Yeah. Feel free. I love to help people out, help understand. So, with this was kind of the end of this grave shift supervisor position. We started up a new line, a high-speed line that could run 4 times faster than what this building could. So they asked me to go be a shift supervisor on a new shift, which was kind of a ragtag team of people I had worked with before as part of my swing shift team that I was on before. Same with some of the grave shift people. And other than that, it was a lot of new hires. We kind of tripled in size. There was about 20 people starting out on this team, which was a lot more than the kind of 10 to 15 that I had on the previous one. And there were a lot of new faces, and it was all new equipment. So we had to structure things a little differently. So it was no longer 2 lines. We were just one massive line. But this was kind of the setup we had, is there was me at the top, and then I had 4 managers who were essentially just managers in different sections of the line. And eventually we got to a point about a year in or so where I had a second in command for a lot of those managers. So that way they could have somebody to fill in when they were gone. That wasn't just me trying to do multiple jobs all at once. And underneath of them were their little teams of line workers that they would rotate with. And oftentimes we would mix up and jamble so that the line workers could be underneath other managers and grow their own skills from the other strengths. So most of this team consisted of kind of high school and college kids, and there were a few kind of older sweet ladies that sweet moms that were on the team too, and they were really nice as far as the motherly figure for the team of these high school students. But it was a pretty interesting culture. There were a lot of us who knew each other outside of work, and we kind of grew off of each other in that essence. But I did decide that kind of quickly I had a vision for this team. My vision was to train all of the line workers to be line managers and to train all the line managers to be shift supervisors. And that's a pretty hard feat, especially when you're just really starting up a line that has a lot of these newer people and brand new equipment that no one's ever run before. So I began to carve a path on how I could get there. And I came up with kind of 3 core principles and objectives that I felt we needed to try to focus on. So firstly, we needed to learn how all the equipment ran, right? If we didn't know how to run the equipment, people could become frustrated. People would get bogged down in like the downtime or issues they would have, and we wouldn't be very successful. So that was kind of the first main objective. The second one was more so along those lines of trying to grow them to be leaders by trying to implement trainings on soft skills such as leadership and teamwork and motivation, kind of all those other great soft skills that leaders should have or need to have. And then lastly, I needed to sustain the culture that came from this, which I didn't know what it was going to be, because at this point, I believe I was 20 years old and hadn't done a whole lot of leadership training or anything. So all I knew was that once we got there, I needed to make sure we sustained that and held it. So starting out with the equipment, we did have a benefit from being on swing shift that I took full advantage of. We worked 4 days a week and they were 10-hour shifts, which day shift also did 4 days a week, 10-hour shifts, but that left us as kind of the closing shift. So as the closing shift, we were in charge of running whatever flavor or product we were running for the day. We were in charge of running that out and then cleaning up the line and prepping it so that day shift would be ready to go in the morning as soon as they came in. So with that, I found that I wanted to start to develop a habit where I implemented a habit of having all of the entire team, once we were finished with the clean, we would spend 15 minutes to focus on a equipment on the line and help train to learn more about it. So whether that was a machine on the packaging side or a machine on the mix side where the ice cream's coming out, or how to adjust those little things, that the tiny changes, the 1% improvements that you can get from knowing more about the equipment or making those small adjustments, they could do on the fly without just having a lot of issues. So on top of that, I ended up developing a standard grading chart, which I used to help identify and communicate to the team where I felt their knowledge, skills, and abilities were at. This was posted up with the weekly schedule as well. They were able to see how I felt they were doing on each position, or how well I felt they knew how to clean a piece of equipment, or different things like that. And that helped them see, okay, this is where I'm currently at, or where he thinks I'm at. What can I do to improve upon that or make things better? Learn more about things. With that, I also set the goals. So similar to that grave shift position, I did set a large quarterly goal that rolled into 3 monthly goals that each rolled into 4 weekly goals, where we would post them on that schedule, similar to that notes section, and try to learn more about each thing. All right, excuse me for a second.
Now, when you're doing this, are you showing your team all of these steps as well? And you know, the line leaders that reported up to you, are you saying, hey guys, this is what we're doing? Or were you kind of developing this model in the background and then just, you know, using the model with your team, or as opposed to showing them the model and saying, this is what we're going through?
So a little bit of both. We talked about extensively, like at least as far as the goals and how they were modeled, and they actually helped me set the goals as far as what the weekly ones were going to be, what the like which which area they felt that their individual teams needed to focus on more than the others. And that's actually the final thing that I did, was I tried to train down the ladder. So once we decided, once we decided that this is what we were going to talk about next week, then the week before that, I would meet with my line managers in our kind of weekly team meeting, where we would go over the general team business stuff. And then at the end of that, I'd do a training with them saying that this is next week's topic. This is what I want everybody to know about it. And here's kind of a paper or a pamphlet of a reminder on what we're about to go over, so that they make sure, so it made sure that they were preaching and teaching the exact same thing. It was pretty standardized. And that kind of structure and setup worked out extremely well. So well that we've done that for the entire time that I was this shift supervisor. And many of them who were on that shift, or that current shift that we still have, is still doing those things, just in a different form. So yeah. One thing to note though, is that after this worked really well for the first month, we ran into an issue where all of a sudden we were having.
Quick, we have a question online. Can you see it, or do you want me to read it?
Go ahead and read it for him.
Okay. Do you have a daily pre-shift or operational meeting where you review production status issues and review the goals and their progress?
So when I first initialized this kind of methodology, we were doing it at the end of the shift. And then about 6 or so months later into it, that's when we started to implement the before shift checks. And that was also around the same time that we began really focusing on ergonomics and like stretching and whatnot. So we did that kind of twofold, where they would come in, meet together as a group, have that short little meeting while doing their stretches before taking out for the line. And that helped communicate what the plan for the day was, or what things to watch out for. Yeah. And that was also a really impactful thing that we did implement. So yeah, great question. And yes.
Yes, there's a team huddle. Yes, you
Mhm.
do it. How long does that take you? You guys usually, is this like 5 minutes, 15 minutes?
The pre-shift one was usually 5 minutes. Which was kind of just a real brief touch on the things that were coming up for the day. Typically, I would come in 30 minutes before the shift started, and then I would send out a message to my line managers about the real plan for the day in case something had changed. And then in their 5-minute meetings, they would have with the line workers beforehand, they would talk about those changes. Typically around lunchtime, about 4-5 hours into the shift, I'd send them an updated message. So while we were rotating out for breaks and lunch, they could let them know about any future updates if there was anything needed for the latter half of the shift. And then at the end of the shift was where we really focused on how the shift went, the statistics, and the training, the small like little training that we did every day.
Okay. McKinley, do we have one more question, or is that it? Like the stretching exercises. Absolutely.
Nice.
No,
Yeah.
Good Japanese style. Get everybody stretching. We have McKinley for that here in our office. She leads us in some, 5-minute yoga sessions, which is helpful.
Oh, beautiful. Nice. That's great. That's great. So getting back to this, as I was saying, there was an issue after the first month. We started having issues in production where the beginning, or either on day shift or the beginning of our shift, equipment would be down, but we really need to run out the flavor or whatever it was we were doing for the day, which in turn pushed our cleaning time further back. And I was really stressed out for a while about how the team was going to take the whole 15-minute habit that we were creating at that time and really trying to hold people to. So I was pretty concerned that if we stayed an hour late, people weren't going to want to do that extra little 15-minute activity. But it turned out that almost all of them, I think there was only one person who had an issue with that still. And they were actually really encouraged, and some of them wanted even further in-depth training that the line managers would stay another 15 minutes with them afterwards and go into more nitty-gritty detail because they understood the basics already. So along those lines, you can only train on equipment so much. Oh, there we go. You can only train on equipment so much because once people know and understand a lot of it, it's hard to just say the same thing over and over again. So that's when we decided to switch to soft skills. And as a kind of younger manager, I didn't know much about leadership and kind of other soft skills. Like I had done these kind of developments and have been learning stuff as I go. I've taken quite a few psychology classes, but I referenced those as well as kind of these 3 books to help me develop a lot more of the strategies that I ended up implementing. So the first one, I can read you like a book, is more along the lines of body language and helping to understand that how to read people's micro expressions to know what they're really thinking or how they're really feeling. So you can then react to whatever is going on or help identify some issues they may be having or things they don't understand. And then I read Why This Horse Won't Drink, and that's more about, like it mentions there, how to win and keep employee commitment, how to motivate people. We did a training that was all focused around that. And then lastly, this Primal Leadership book, which is along the lines of emotional intelligence and different leadership styles, which is what I ended up using to help teach and develop their leadership styles, to help at least identify them so they can start to see, okay, this is what I'm comfortable with or what I'm currently at. These may be the things that I'm struggling with and how we can help motivate that. So yeah, as I learned about these concepts from reading these books, I began to teach them to my line managers, who in turn would teach them down to their line workers, very similar to that whole training down the ladder system, except
Was
with
this was this a structured thing? Like you had a book club and you had to read this book this month and talk about it with your team, or was this just kind of informal? How did you get everyone involved in this learning that you were doing for yourself?
Yeah, it was mostly informal.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would kind of read these books. I actually picked up, I think, all 3 of these from the camp from Utah State one day. They were just selling their old library books for $1. So I bought these 3 books, and they did a lot for. I got a lot out of that $1, out of those $3. So
Yeah, that's money well spent right there. Can I buy those books off you?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so typically I would kind of read about it, and then as I was reading through it, I started to develop some kind of documentation about what I'd learned, and then I would start to get that kind of conversation going with my line managers. And this was mostly along while we were still doing the equipment stuff. So we were kind of prepping for this soft skill knowledge development before it actually arrived, so we were ready for it. I would also develop bigger kind of group session trainings where I would bring in all of the line workers and have them go through a PowerPoint similar to this one about those books or concepts within them, so we could all have a conversation afterwards about things that they might have seen or struggled with. But that's kind of the general guideline that we used for it. But yeah, a couple of my line managers did read a few of these books, but they would just try to help enhance the trainings that I'd set up, and we would develop them that way. But yeah, a lot of development and trial and error came from trying to learn about soft skills and teaching them. So lastly, the whole culture. So once this had all finally gotten pieced together, it was about 1.5 years into being in this or running this line, and I'd finally reached my vision or my goal. That was, again, to train the line workers to be line managers and the line managers to be shift supervisors. And what the really interesting thing is there was a really good 9-month section or so where, because of the culture that we had and the retention that came from it, I didn't lose hardly any employees except for one person. And I was sad and happy to see them go because they had a really cool story. When they first started our team, which was maybe about a year into when the shift was going, they were struggling a lot with life. They'd gone through quite a few traumatic experiences, weren't doing very super well. But as they were part of this team and started to get into this structure and really start to learn these things and learn about goal setting, learn about motivating, learn about leadership, they grew like tenfold and were able to kind of piece their life back together. And eventually they felt really comfortable and confident enough to go back to a college that they had previously been attending that they had dropped out of and work on getting multiple degrees, like bachelor's degrees there. And they still give me updates every now and again. And it's really awesome as a manager to kind of see one of your people grow like that. I don't know if any of you have ever had that experience, but I really hope that you do someday. So
Very cool. We have another question that looks like here.
Yeah.
So what happens if you have someone on your team that doesn't want to move to the next level?
Okay. Yeah. So I did have a couple of people that were pretty content and happy with like always wanting to be a line worker. For them, I still held them at a high standard. So once they kind of maxed out their level pay scale or whatever you guys have in your own companies, I still would challenge them with goals that they would have to individually set on our one-on-one evaluations. And if they weren't meeting kind of those criteria or bettering themselves in that way, then I'd really have a sit down with them and be like, what's really going on? Like, is there something here at work, or is there something outside of work that hasn't been going well for you? How can I help? Of course, you don't want to get into people's lives too much, but knowing that you're there to support them and be there for them will help them still be a champion for you as a manager or supervisor. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I'll add on to that too. I think it's okay for us to recognize that not everybody needs to be advancing the way we think of advancement through career paths and up to leadership positions, that sort of thing. There's plenty of folks out there that, could be leaders, but maybe don't want to. It's added stress. It's not worth the cost. And it's just like you said, it's okay to just hold people to a high standard and let people be where they're at if that's where they want to be, but also give people opportunities so that those who do want to learn and grow can. And it's all good in manufacturing and in business in general, just to letting people thrive. And if they're thriving and they're happy and where they are, then great. If they need to grow, man, it's our job to give them that chance.
Yeah, that's a beautiful summary and well put. But yeah, great question, because that does come up. So some other effects about the culture that we'd end up sustaining was that I had a really highly respected line in the plant. We were really high performing as far as efficiencies and throughput, which really helped out the bottom line. And other managers or supervisors really appreciated the help that my line would send to them. Oftentimes, they would also be a little upset because they weren't able to create that culture with their own team, mostly because they weren't holding themselves accountable and committing to that kind of improvement. But they saw that it's possible. So they struggled with that a little bit, but they really appreciated the help whenever we showed up. So the other important fact is that because I had this kind of golden team, it bought me a lot of time as the shift supervisor because they were all self-sustaining. I got to a point where I would kind of get them going for the day, and then I didn't need to check on them. I didn't need to put out any fires because there weren't any fires that were growing. And that really helped give me time to dig even deeper into different projects or assessments that I wanted to help, in turn, help the team grow more. So a couple of those things, oh, clicked off of it, there we go, included, this was kind of one of our final versions of that notes section, where it has a lot of the same
This was
similar
the
stuff.
advanced version of what you showed before
Yep.
after it evolved.
So yeah, you can see that this is where we started to add on those efficiencies for the previous week and compare them to the different plant and things like that. And we didn't have a system to track all of this digitally yet. We kind of did, but from the production floor, we didn't really have anything going on. So a lot of these calculations were actually measured by my line managers, and they were really adamant about measuring these things because they really wanted to know how well we were doing, whether it was good compared to the plant goal, how many bars we were outputting, information that was getting passed around, where we were going, what goals, what things we were planning on running, stuff like that. Kind of open communication really helped the team thrive as far as those statistical analysis and visuals, because this was, just like before, posted at the bottom of our weekly schedule, and they would go over this every week in their weekly team meeting, as well as they took their efficiencies for the day and would go over those in their daily meetings. So another thing that I did, like I mentioned, is these were kind of their one-on-one goals that I set during their evaluations. So these goals, I told them, could be anything work related, or it could be school life related, because like I said, many people were college, high school students, or it could be at home life. Like some people on here had weight goals. People were looking to help advance their levels in production, looking on focusing on more of those in-depth trainings on specific equipment if they had already maxed out kind of their level in the area. But in general, this was really great. And I'd oftentimes post up these goals for people to see, and they knew that this was on the quarterly evaluation. So we had basically 3 months to make sure that we were doing these things. And oftentimes with posting those up, they would see like, oh, like Burke and Chase, for example, are both looking at or reviewing level 3 and trying to get a better understanding of it. So they would in turn help each other out. They'd help each other grow at the line worker level without needing us to only give them information at the end of the shift in those 15-minute trainings. Another thing I had a chance to do was develop a personality assessment, which came kind of from a color code sort of aspect, as well as the motivational book, I believe, if I remember right. But these were kind of a summary of the assessment that came from it, what our scores were. As you can see, we had a really high personality trait on the caregiver end, and I believe that was mostly due to the culture that we had on the line. The next thing I did after that was a leadership assessment, where taking that primal leadership book, I was able to make another assessment that's based on based on these questions. This is kind of what would roughly suit you. These are your primary, secondary, and tertiary leadership styles. And then on top of that, I would talk with them about it and give them handouts saying that here's some general information about your main leadership style. Here are some things that'll come easy. Here's some things that oftentimes these leaders struggle with or might fail. So take it for what you will, or let's set a goal to help improve on something that you know you might be struggling with. And that really helped people out. But kind of the building blocks that helped us develop this.
Did you have anybody kind of push back on those assessments or anything? Were they eager to do them or not eager to do them? Or
this was more on kind of that later end of managing that line. And I think at this point, they were all really open to both change and improving themselves from
So
that kind of
you'd
culture
already
that we
kind
had.
of softened them to the point where they're like, okay, we're trying new things around here, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that kind of barrier sort of broke around the time we were training on soft skills.
Yeah. Did we have
Because-
another question, McKinley, or is that? That was a thank you. Okay. Yeah. No, I really like the fact that you gave people feedback on their personality tips. I think that's really eye-opening for a lot of us to learn kind of who we are and what we default to. And that's very helpful. So I love that you did that.
Yeah, it was really good. We'll kind of push through the rest of this pretty quickly, so that way we can finish on time with the Q&A. So just in recap, the things that I did.
We do have a question. Sorry to interrupt you. We have one question that just came in.
Yep.
What was the demographic of your team?
As far as let me go back to here. So,
I
like I
guess that would
mentioned,
be men, women, age, right?
yeah.
Experience, all those different things.
So most of that was along the lines of, like I said, high school, college students, kind of people in the age range from 16 to like 25 was probably the majority, like 80% or so of the people I had. And then I had a few older kind of sweet moms who were also on my team that, they were in their later 50s or so. But that's kind of the general demographic. A lot of the
Any
people,
non-English speakers or?
we had dual language speakers. Yeah, people who spoke both English and Spanish, but for most of the part, everybody was speaking English, so it was easier to help communicate to them.
Mhm.
Yeah, but outside of that, we with that kind of age range, there wasn't a whole lot of like big engineering or bachelor degree owners working as a line worker. So that's kind of where we were at. There was a lot of people still trying to figure life out, or if they were on the older side, they'd kind of figured life out and were just trying to find something that was steady and a nice place to be at. So hope that answers your question. Okay, so looking back, I wanted to focus on the three kind of main principles that I had realized when I was the grave shift manager, that through open communication, goal setting, and that continuous improvement, those kind of three behaviors really rolled together to help establish a great team. And then emphasizing on a focus on learning the equipment, like how the equipment's being ran, the soft skills on growing the leaders, and then the culture of just trying to maintain whatever came from that. Those kind of principles and landing right there in the middle really helped develop this team to what it became. And again, there was my vision. So taking that, I actually spoke with James Peterson this week, which I know he was part of one of the earlier talks today. And
He was here with
him.
Taffy Town, talking about the work we're doing at Taffy Town, which is great.
Yeah, he's a really good guy. I've enjoyed working with him for the last year. He helped me realize that there's kind of a general model for this setup is you want to have a team that's confident. It's kind of a vital behavior, one that's direction oriented, and one that's always looking for ways to enhance or better the process. And through that, you can kind of obtain three core objectives, which is as far as you first of all want to win their hands, which is them being committed and capable to actually doing the job that they're told they need to be doing. Their heads, which are they're committed to growing and willing to learn more. And then lastly, their hearts, which is they're committed to being a champion for the team and the team's vision or whatever that may be. And then with that, all rolled together, you can reach your team's vision or your future state that you want to have. And I think that's super powerful because it's kind of a blank template that once you decide on what goes where and how you can help reach the vision, then once you start to implement it and really commit to it, you can start to see great results, especially if you do it for a long time. But with that, where do you begin? I recommend that starting out with deciding on what your team vision is going to be, or what you want your future state to be, is the best place to begin, because that'll help you decide on what you really want to fill these blocks with, as far as how you want to fill them, or what areas you want to focus on, or what objectives you want to have. So with that, I just kind of have this great little quote and kind of the purpose of it. Why is growing and motivating leaders important? There, like we mentioned, there are only so many leadership positions to fill. So why have so many? And that's because as a leader, I'm a firm believer that we need to focus more on bettering our people. Because unless you have a very automated company, your staff and labor hours paid is most likely the biggest investment in your company. However, as your people grow and develop, I promise that your bottom line will also grow and develop, because they'll be the champion for your company. You won't have a high turnover rate. You'll be able to really focus and get at what you want to get at. But with that, we also need to keep in mind that the collective intelligence is far greater than the sum of any individual part, which means that the more people who are willing to help better the process and bring their whole hands, heads, and their heart into it, you'll begin to develop a greater pool of things that you can quickly improve on or do to help better or achieve your guys' mission or goal. So finally, I wanted to set up your guys' challenge. So like you said, it's always great to challenge people. So I want to challenge you that by the end of today, which I know we're getting into the later end of the day, I want you to spend 5 to 10 minutes today to think about your team's vision or your very long-term future state that you want to have. Kind of start to think on that. You don't have to fully develop it or fledge it out right now. But once you do decide that, or if you already do have that decided on, I believe you should call a meeting with your direct reports and your kind of team members. So I know many of you are probably higher up in the company and aren't necessarily on the front line, but I dare you to kind of start to develop one, trial it on your end with your direct reports, and then I want you to assign them to do the exact same thing for their teams. And as you kind of train down the ladder over time, as this methodology takes place, I think you'll start to see a lot of amazing things start to spark in your company. And you'll start to see a lot of growth in both the bottom line and in the people that you have employed, your team members. So that's all that I had. Here's just my email and phone number extension here at work if you guys need any advice or want to talk further on some of these things. But yeah, that's kind of it. It's like,
Thank you, Wyatt. We really
Yeah.
appreciate your insights, and congratulations on, I think the thing I took away most was you had a bigger picture and a goal in mind, and then you were willing to stick to it and lead by example. And it sounds like and seems like you were just very consistent in applying that concept of servant leadership, working hard and consistently creating that environment where people felt safe and had open communication, and that's sticking with it over years and years, like you've done. Eventually you bring everyone along with you, and that consistency is a very powerful thing. So well done, and thank you for sharing your experience. We appreciate it.
yeah, of course. And yeah, the other kind of long-term effect, like you kind of hinted at, is that a lot of the team members I had on that swing shift are now actually they're supervisors of other lines as we've kind of grown in this last year. So like once I moved up, they easily filled that position. And then we started to hire on more lines, and their line managers and shift supervisors, those positions got filled by a lot of the people that were on my team. And currently half of Casper's shift supervisors were once a part of my team at some point in their kind of career here. And they are now using a lot of the same principles and concepts that I once used, either with their own leadership kind of emphasis pushed into it, or they've adapted it to improve upon it in their own way. And it's been really great. So, yeah.
Very cool. Any other questions for Wyatt? Anyone? If not, thank you, and stick around. So the only thing left really today is there's a wrap-up session at 3 o'clock. So here in 10 minutes, we're just gonna, have Todd Bingham from Utah Manufacturers Association speak, and then we'll wrap things up after that. So we have one question, and then we'll get to that.
Okay.
So what originally triggered your desire to improve?
Honestly, I had a not so great life experience coming up. Back when I was in high school, kind of when I first started working at Casper's, I was really struggling with kind of what I wanted to do with life and not very motivated in a lot of things, and kind of starting to have this consistent job to go to really helped me grow as a person. And then I realized that I really enjoyed helping people and improving on just improving in general, both myself and those around me, because as I began to get better and improve at things, my team would also follow suit in whatever I was improving on. And then that would inspire them to also improve. And with these little success stories, like I mentioned about the person who was on my line, who eventually moved on and went to college, those little things really inspired me to keep going. But yeah.
Very nice. Sounds like it's been a good experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you, Wyatt. And thank you everyone for joining. And have again, we're wrapping up in about 5 minutes. We'll have a Todd speak to wrap up, and then have a fantastic day. And we will see you guys in the next, we have factory tours coming up. We do virtual factory tours on the 12th. We have live factory tours. So if you want to go visit some of the cool companies like Boeing and Stadler Rail and others, you can sign up for those. It's on October 12th. Those are $25 a piece. Go tour a factory, get lunch, and learn a lot of cool things about what other people here in Utah are doing. And in addition to that, we have a Connects matchmaking day. If you want to learn how to make more connections with other Utah companies as suppliers or vendors, you can join that day. And our folks over at Connects Utah will help you find and become a part of the supply chain and sourcing that we're trying to network and connect here in Utah. Other than that, come visit the UMA website or the Impact Utah website to learn more about events, trainings that we have coming up. One of the things we do is a pit crew challenge, where we bring in one of our NASCAR cars and train your team in leadership, continuous improvement, and teamwork while learning how to do a pit crew style changeover of the tires on that NASCAR, which is a 4-hour event that is a ton of fun for your team. So if you're interested in that, Lean Six Sigma, Green Belt, Yellow Belt training, leadership training, we have Diane Gushow from Salt Lake Community College, which just did a session concurrent with this one. That's fantastic. So tons of great ways and avenues for you to learn how to make your business better. So if you're interested in all that, come to our websites or just reach out to me, and I'd be happy to share information on things that we have planned for the rest of this year. Thanks again. Stick around or head on over to track A, actually. And track A is where we're going to wrap things up. So go to the link and we'll go to track A.